Dr. Alina Blackwood stared at her computer screen, her coffee long forgotten and cold. The lab was quiet at 3 a.m., save for the soft hum of equipment and the occasional beep from the mass spectrometer. She had been studying an anomalous blood sample for the past 14 hours, and what she found made absolutely no sense. "This can't be right," she muttered, running her hands through her silver-streaked dark hair. The sample came from a patient named Marcus Henderson, who had survived what should have been a fatal exposure to radiation. His blood had begun exhibiting properties that defied conventional biology. The door to the lab clicked open, and Dr. James Rodriguez, her research partner, walked in with fresh coffee. Still obsessing over the Henderson case. "James, look at this." Alina pointed to her screen. "The nucleotide sequences in his blood aren't random. They're forming patterns that shouldn't exist in nature." James leaned closer, his eyes widening. "That looks almost like computer code," Alina finished. "It's as if someone embedded information directly into his DNA, specifically in regions associated with blood type markers." She pulled up another screen showing similar analyses from other unusual cases: survivors of deadly accidents, people with unexplainable immunities, individuals with extraordinary healing abilities. All of them had one thing in common: their blood contained these strange, coded sequences. "We need more samples," James said, already reaching for his phone. "I'll contact Dr. Reeves at Central Hospital." A soft ping from Alina's computer interrupted them. The algorithm she'd been running had finished its analysis of the pattern structure. What it revealed made her blood run cold. "James," she whispered, "these aren't just patterns, they're keys. Each blood type has its own unique sequence, like a genetic password, and they're all part of something bigger, something that's been dormant in human DNA for thousands of years." The lab's lights flickered suddenly, and both scientists froze. Through the windows, they could see other buildings in the research complex going dark. "Power surge," James suggested, but Alina was already shaking her head. "The backup generators should have kicked in." She quickly began saving her data to an external drive. "Something's wrong." Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Alina's hand trembled as she pulled the drive from her computer. "James, delete everything, now." The door burst open, revealing several figures in black tactical gear. Their leader, a tall woman with stark white hair and ice-blue eyes, stepped forward. "Dr. Alina Blackwood," she announced, her voice carrying an authority that filled the room. "I'm Director Victoria Kane of the Genetic Preservation Bureau. Your research has triggered several of our security protocols." Alina clutched the drive behind her back. "I've never heard of your organization." "That's by design," Victoria replied. "We've been watching you since you first noticed the anomalies in blood type variations. What you've discovered." She paused, surveying the lab. "It was never meant to be found, not yet." James stepped forward. "These patterns could revolutionize medicine, help countless people." "Or destroy everything," Victoria cut him off. "Did you think you were the first to notice? Throughout history, others have glimpsed what you found. Each time we've had to intervene. The truth about human blood types isn't just some scientific curiosity, Dr. Blackwood. It's a key to something far more dangerous than you can imagine." Alina's scientific mind raced with possibilities. "The coded sequences, they're not random mutations, are they? They were put there deliberately." Victoria's expression darkened. "Dr. Blackwood, you have two choices. Come with us, work within our parameters, help us understand these sequences safely. Or we shut down your research permanently." The drive felt heavy in Alina's hand. Years of work, countless discoveries, all leading to this moment. But something in Victoria's eyes told her this was bigger than academic pursuit or medical advancement. "If I agree," Alina said carefully, "I want answers, real ones." Victoria nodded slowly. "You'll get them, but I warn you, once you know the truth about what lies dormant in human blood, about why these patterns exist, you can never go back." Alina shared a look with James, who gave her a subtle nod. Whatever they had stumbled upon, it was clear their discovery was just the beginning of something far more extraordinary. "Then show me," Alina said, stepping forward. "Show me what's really hidden in our blood." The underground facility of the Genetic Preservation Bureau hummed with activity. Alina stood before a vast wall of screens, each displaying different blood sample analyses from around the world. Her mind struggled to process what Director Kane had just revealed. "You're telling me that every human blood type contains dormant genetic sequences?" Alina asked, watching as the screens cycled through various patterns. "And these sequences are artificial." Victoria Kane stood beside her, hands clasped behind her back. "Artificial suggests human intervention, Dr. Blackwood. What we're dealing with is far older." The central screen switched to a new display, ancient cave paintings discovered in various parts of the world. Each depicted similar scenes, figures with glowing veins, performing seemingly impossible feats. 30,000 years ago, Victoria continued, something changed in human DNA. The changes were subtle, precise, and deliberately encoded into our blood types. We've spent centuries trying to understand why. Dr. Marcus Henderson, the patient whose blood sample had started Alina's journey, entered the room. He looked different now, more confident, almost glowing with vitality. "Show her," he said to Victoria. Victoria nodded and Marcus stepped forward. He extended his hand, and Alina gasped as his veins began to glow with a soft blue light. The nearby computers flickered, their displays responding to his presence. "Marcus isn't just a radiation survivor," Victoria explained. "He's one of the first modern humans to accidentally activate these dormant sequences. His exposure to radiation somehow triggered what was sleeping in his blood." Alina's scientific mind raced with questions. "The patterns I found, their instructions." "More like activation keys," Marcus replied, letting the glow fade. "Each blood type carries different potential abilities, but triggering them naturally is nearly impossible. That's why the Bureau exists, to prevent dangerous attempts at activation and protect those who accidentally unlock their potential." A young researcher burst into the room, her face pale. "Director Kane, we've got a situation. Someone's leaked information about the blood type sequences online." Victoria's expression hardened. "How much?" "Enough," the researcher replied. "Underground labs are already trying to replicate Dr. Blackwood's research. There are reports of unauthorized experiments." Alina felt her stomach drop. Her external drive, the one she'd hidden before leaving her lab, was missing. And there was only one person who knew where she'd kept it. "James," she whispered, "he must have taken it." Victoria turned sharply. "Your research partner, the one who was so eager to share this knowledge." The screens around them suddenly filled with breaking news reports. Multiple incidents around the globe. Unexplained phenomena, people exhibiting strange abilities. Chaos in hospitals as blood banks reported unusual activity in stored samples. "It's starting," Marcus said grimly. "Once people learn their blood contains hidden potential, they'll do anything to unlock it." Victoria activated a secure communication channel. "This is Director Kane. Initiate Protocol Crimson. All field teams deploy immediately. Priority is containment and protection of activated individuals." Alina watched in horror as more reports flooded in. A hospital in Singapore reported all their O-negative blood samples were exhibiting unprecedented regenerative properties. In Brazil, a blood bank's entire inventory had begun emitting strange energy signatures. "I need to find James," Alina insisted. "He doesn't understand what he's dealing with." "No," Victoria agreed, her voice cold. "He doesn't understand that some of these sequences were locked away for a reason. Not all blood types carry beneficial traits, Dr. Blackwood. Some contain warnings, others carry defensive measures, and a few—" She paused, looking at a red-flagged alert appearing on the main screen. "A few contain something like genetic time bombs." Marcus stepped forward. "Let me go with her. If James has activated any sequences, I can sense it. We might be able to contain this before it spreads further." Victoria considered for a moment, then nodded. "You have 12 hours. After that, we implement more permanent containment measures." As Alina and Marcus prepared to leave, the facility's lights dimmed momentarily. On the main screen, a pattern appeared one Alina recognized from her original research. "That's impossible," she breathed. "That sequence was theoretical. It shouldn't exist in any living person." Victoria's face went ash-white. "Unless someone has already found a way to combine blood types and activate multiple sequences simultaneously." "What happens then?" Alina asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. "Then," Victoria replied, "we discover exactly why these sequences were hidden in our blood in the first place. And God help us all if we're not ready for what awakens." Thunder rolled across the night sky as Alina and Marcus approached the abandoned pharmaceutical research facility. Rain pelted their faces, but Alina barely noticed. Her mind was fixed on the faint blue glow emanating from the building's windows. "James is definitely here," Marcus whispered, his own veins pulsing with a subtle luminescence. "And he's not alone. I can sense at least a dozen activated blood signatures." Alina checked her tablet, displaying the facility's layout. He must be using the old clean rooms for his experiments. The equipment there could help him isolate and replicate the blood sequences. A scream pierced the night, followed by the sound of breaking glass. Marcus grabbed Alina's arm, pulling her behind a concrete barrier as several figures stumbled out of the building. Their veins glowed with different colors: blue, green, amber, but the light was unstable, flickering like faulty neon. "Failed activations," Marcus explained grimly. "Their bodies are rejecting the artificial triggering process." Alina's heart clenched. These were test subjects, people James had convinced to participate in his experiments. "We have to help them. First, we need to stop James before he makes more victims." Marcus touched the wall of the facility, his eyes closing in concentration. "He's in the main lab, sub-level 2. They made their way inside, passing abandoned security stations and darkened corridors. The air grew thicker with an electric tension that made Alina's skin tingle. When they reached the stairwell leading to sub-level 2, they found the door sealed with an advanced electronic lock. Marcus placed his hand on the control panel. Blue light flowed from his veins into the circuitry, and the door clicked open. One advantage of Type AB blood activation: enhanced technological interface. The lab they entered looked like a scene from a nightmare. Dozens of blood samples lined the walls in specialized containment units, each glowing with different intensities. Complex machinery hummed, processing and analyzing genetic sequences. And in the center of it all stood James, his back to them as he worked at a central console. "James," Alina called out, "you need to stop this." He turned and Alina gasped. James's eyes glowed with an unnatural purple light, and luminescent patterns crawled beneath his skin like living circuits. "Alina, you're just in time. I've done it. I've cracked the code completely." "What have you done to yourself?" Alina stepped forward, but Marcus held her back. "Something magnificent," James smiled, spreading his arms. "I've combined sequences from multiple blood types. The potential isn't just additive, it's exponential. Watch." He raised his hand, and every electronic device in the room responded, screens flickering to life, machinery whirring at his command. But Alina could see the caused blood trickled from his nose, and his skin looked almost translucent. "Your body can't handle multiple sequences," Marcus warned. "It's tearing you apart at a cellular level." "Small price to pay for unlocking humanity's true potential," James countered. "Did you know there are sequences that can rewrite genetic code in real time, ones that can manipulate energy, matter, even time itself? We were meant to be gods." A violent tremor shook the facility. Warning lights flashed as James's control over the equipment began to falter. One of the blood sample containers exploded, spraying luminescent fluid across the lab. "James, please," Alina pleaded. "The sequences were separated into different blood types for a reason. Combining them isn't just dangerous, it's destabilizing the very genetic safeguards built into human DNA." "Safeguards?" James laughed, though blood now flowed freely from his eyes. "More like chains. We've been kept in genetic prison for millennia, but I've found the key to our cell." Marcus suddenly stiffened. "Alina, we need to leave. Now, his genetic structure is collapsing." James looked at his hands, watching as his glowing veins began to pulse erratically. No, no, I can control this. I just need to adjust the sequence parameters. The room's temperature plummeted. Ice crystals formed on surfaces as James's deteriorating condition began affecting the physical environment. Equipment sparked and failed as waves of unstable energy rolled off his body. The facility's containment systems are failing, Marcus shouted over the growing chaos. If his genetic collapse triggers a chain reaction in those blood samples. Elena understood the implications. The explosion would release unstable genetic material into the atmosphere, potentially affecting anyone with compatible blood types. She had to make a choice, try to save her friend, or prevent a catastrophe. James, she called out one last time, if you ever trusted me as a scientist, as a friend, shut down the experiments, please. For a moment, the old James seemed to surface through the purple glow in his eyes. He looked at his work, at the suffering test subjects, at his own disintegrating body. His hand hovered over the emergency containment controls. I only wanted to free us, he whispered. Then everything went white. Elena regained consciousness in the Bureau's medical ward, the sterile white ceiling swimming into focus. Her body ached, but what hurt more was the memory of James's final moments. Marcus sat beside her bed, his usual glow dimmed but steady. The containment worked, he said quietly, answering her unspoken question. James, he activated the emergency protocols at the last second. The blast was contained within the facility. Elena closed her eyes, grief mixing with relief. The test subjects. All recovered, the unstable activations reversed naturally once the source was eliminated. Marcus paused, his expression grave. But we have a bigger problem. Director Kane entered the room, accompanied by a distinguished-looking man Elena hadn't seen before. His presence commanded attention, and even Victoria seemed to defer to him. Dr. Blackwood, the man said, his voice carrying centuries of authority. I'm Dr. Thomas Blackthorne, head curator of the Blood Archives. What happened in that facility has set something in motion that we've feared for millennia. Elena sat up, ignoring her protesting muscles. What do you mean? Victoria activated a wall screen showing a global map. Countless points of light pulsed across its surface, each representing an activated blood sequence. Before James's experiment, we had perhaps a dozen known active individuals worldwide. Now we're seeing spontaneous activations everywhere, Thomas continued. The energy released by James's genetic collapse sent out a kind of wake-up call. The dormant sequences in human blood are responding. But that's impossible, Elena protested. The sequences need specific triggers. They needed specific triggers, Marcus corrected. Something fundamental has changed. It's like James's experiment wasn't just an activation attempt. It was a key turning in a very old lock. Thomas nodded solemnly. The sequences in our blood were never meant to stay dormant forever. They were waiting for a signal that James inadvertently provided. Elena watched the map, the points of light multiplying even as they spoke. You knew this could happen. That's why the Bureau exists, not just to protect the secret, but to prepare for this moment. Partially, Victoria admitted. But even we don't know everything. The blood archives contain records dating back thousands of years, documenting fragments of the truth. The sequences, the separation into blood types, the dormancy, it was all by design. Whose design? Elena demanded. Thomas approached the window, looking out at the dawn breaking over the city. We called them the predecessors. They walked Earth long before humans, achieved technological and biological mastery beyond our comprehension. But they saw something coming, a threat they couldn't defeat directly. So they created a backup plan, Marcus added. They encoded their knowledge, their abilities, their very essence into genetic sequences and hid them in an emerging species, us. Elena's scientific mind raced with implications. The blood types, they're not just different keys. They're different pieces of their legacy, separated to prevent exactly what James tried to do. Until humanity was ready, Thomas confirmed. The sequences weren't just hidden randomly in blood types. They form a pattern, a progression. Each activation should have happened in a specific order, preparing us gradually for the full awakening. A loud alarm suddenly blared through the facility. Victoria rushed to a terminal, her face paling at what she saw. It's happening faster than we predicted. The spontaneous activations, they're triggering secondary sequences we didn't even know existed. The map now showed swirling patterns of light, different blood types creating intricate networks of energy across the globe. But unlike James's chaotic combination, these activations seemed purposeful, coordinated. Look at the pattern, Elena breathed, recognizing something in the swirling lights. It's not random chaos. The blood types are activating in harmony, creating some kind of message, Thomas finished. The predecessors left us more than just their powers, they left us a warning. The lights on the map began pulsing in sync, and every activated individual across the globe felt it, a deep, primal knowing awakening in their blood. Elena gasped as her own veins began to glow faintly, her type of blood responding to the global cascade. "What's the warning?" she whispered, though part of her already knew the answer. Thomas's face was grim. The thing the predecessors fled from, it's still out there, and now it knows we're waking up. Bureau's command center had transformed into a hive of frantic activity. Screens displayed real-time data from across the globe as millions of people experienced simultaneous blood sequence activations. Elena stood at the central console with Thomas and Victoria, watching as humanity underwent an evolutionary leap in a matter of hours. "The patterns are converging," Elena noted, pointing to the holographic display. "Every blood type is activating in a specific sequence, like pieces of a puzzle fitting together." Marcus burst into the room, his usual composed demeanor shattered. "We're detecting something in deep space. Multiple objects moving fast, breaking all known laws of physics." Thomas's face grew ashen. "They're here. The hunters, the force that drove the predecessors to such desperate measures. They've detected the awakening." The room's lights flickered as a deep, subsonic rumble shook the facility. Around the world, every activated individual felt it, a primal warning thrumming through their blood. "What exactly are we facing?" Elena demanded. "The predecessors called them void hunters," Thomas explained, pulling up ancient records on his tablet. "They move through space-time, consuming civilizations that reach a certain level of advancement. The predecessors couldn't defeat them directly, so they devised a different strategy." Victoria continued. "They encoded their most advanced knowledge and abilities into human DNA, specifically our blood. Each blood type carries different aspects of their legacy: Type O for physical enhancement, Type A for technological interface, Type B for energy manipulation, OB for dimensional awareness. And when combined correctly," Thomas added, "the full spectrum of human blood types forms a biological defense system against the hunters, not through violence but through transformation." The facility shook again, harder this time. The sky outside had turned an impossible shade of purple, reality itself seeming to warp. "They're beginning their approach," Marcus reported, his enhanced senses tracking the disturbances. "Traditional military responses will be useless against them." Elena looked at the activation patterns again, her scientific mind racing. "The sequences, they're not just activating randomly. They're creating a global network using human blood types as connection points. We're becoming some kind of unified system." Thomas nodded grimly. "The final gift of the predecessors, not individual powers but collective transformation. Humanity linked together through our blood, becoming something new." Around the world, the awakened began to understand their roles. Type O individuals formed living anchors, their enhanced biology stabilizing the physical world against the hunter's reality-warping effects. Type A activated ones interfaced with global technology, creating a unified defense grid. Type B wielders channeled pure energy, while OB sensitives mapped dimensional weak points. Elena's own blood hummed with purpose as her type abilities fully manifested. She could feel the global network forming, millions of minds linking through activated blood sequences. Humanity was becoming something greater than the sum of its parts. The first hunter materialized above New York, a vast, geometric impossibility that hurt the eyes to look at. But humanity was ready. The blood network activated, and reality itself began to shift. "It's working," Elena breathed, watching through the global consciousness as human blood types combined their abilities exactly as the predecessors had planned. "We're not fighting them. We're changing the fundamental laws they operate on." The hunter tried to initiate its consumption sequence, but found reality unresponsive to its commands. Human blood, encoded with the predecessor's final evolution, was rewriting the rules of existence. More hunters appeared around the globe, but each encountered the same resistance. Humanity, united through blood, was transforming the very fabric of space-time, creating a new paradigm the hunters couldn't comprehend or breach. "The predecessors couldn't beat them," Thomas said softly, watching the spectacle unfold. "So they created a species that could evolve beyond them. That's what the blood types were really for, not to fight the hunters, but to transcend them." Elena felt it through the network, the moment of transformation. Millions of activated humans, their blood types working in perfect harmony, pushed reality past a critical threshold. The hunters, creatures of the old paradigm, found themselves unable to maintain their existence in the new framework humanity had created. One by one, the hunters dissolved, not destroyed, but simply rendered obsolete by the new laws of reality humanity had written through their unified blood. As the purple sky cleared and the last hunter faded, Elena turned to Thomas. "What happens now to us, to humanity?" Thomas smiled, his own blood glowing with newfound purpose. Now we become what the predecessors knew we could be. The blood types were never meant to divide us. They were meant to show us how our differences could make us stronger together." The global network hummed with potential as humanity stood at the threshold of its next great evolution, united by the very thing that had once seemed to separate them, their blood. And this, Elena realized, watching the dawn break over a transformed world, is just the beginning.